Woohoo! We're live. So I am here and ready to answer your questions. This is going to be kind of fun. You may have noticed I'm in my new office space, and this is a lot of fun here. Oops, sorry about that. It is not finished behind me. I'm putting colored paneling, as you can see down here. Oops. Here. I'm going to be putting that all the way up the wall eventually. And so it's kind of a odd decoration. So if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments below or the chat below. And I'm looking forward to seeing those. Let's see. The power of redstone. Howdy do. I'm looking forward to answering any questions you have. Feel free to throw those in there. But yeah, I kind of have my new shop space set up and my new office here. So you are some of the first who get to see this, and I'm looking forward to it. I've just put up insulation. This blue stuff is actually denim insulation, and I like it a lot better than the fiberglass. It's less itchy and a really, really good sound absorption. So I can, when the furnace is going on, speaking of which, I gotta close the door. When the furnace is on, it's not quite as loud in here. Ooh, Bleak Woodworks, good to have you. Yeah, if you haven't seen his mallet, he made a mallet out of what's the word? I want to say mahogany, hickory, smoking wood. I can't remember the name of the wood. That's going to kill me now. But really, really cool mallet. TJ, good to have you here. Ruben, Matthew Dobbins. TJ, Markus Skov. When did you start woodworking? Let's see. I started woodworking when I was 5 years old. I was in my father's, well, it was my father's friend's shop, and let's see. I was like 5 years old, and I was just kind of helping my father out, catching boards off the table saw, and I've been working woodworking ever since then. Hand tools are actually a newer thing to me. I've been working with a full power tool shop most all of my life, and went through a whole bunch of things, basically sold off all my tools and gave up on woodworking until about 3 years ago. I came across my very first hand plane. I'd never touched a hand plane until then, and the world has exploded on me. And I know woodworking, but I'm relearning the whole art and learning to work with the wood and sharpening and all these other things. It's just an extreme enjoyment for me. So woodworking all my life, hand tools about 3 years. So I hope that answers your question. That was from Markus Skov. I think I'm saying that right, but probably not. Scotland. So I'm probably not. Sorry. Make Brooklyn. Hey, good to have you here. Ramiro Corral Jr. Yeah, I think I'm saying that right. To say I'm sorry for butchering names. I am one of the absolute worst, and I will be butchering plenty of names here today. If that's how it goes. What made you stick to hand tools versus working with power tools? Well, to me, growing up, hand tools were archaic, and just why would you use hand tools? They're slow, they're painful, there's no reason to use them. And that was my view on hand tools. I really had no reason to use them, had no desire to do that until I came across a video. Well, okay, let me back up. I sold all my power tools through moving 5 times. We moved into a smaller house and a smaller house and a smaller house, and I sold thousands of dollars worth of power tools. And I basically gave up on woodworking because I didn't have a space to do it. I didn't have time, and it just wasn't working out. And I came across a video by Worth the Effort, great YouTube channel. You gotta check him out. But he was making a grooving plane. And I thought, that's cool. I like it. And it was just one of those light bulb moments of, I could do that. And we moved into a house where I had a space that was 8 foot by 10 foot. And I'm a stay-at-home dad. And so I need something that's, number one, quiet for the kids. Number two, no problems with dust. and having the kids around. And number 3, safety, because the power tools, I really wouldn't want to have the kids in the shop with power tools. Whereas with hand tools, I have no problem with them being in the shop with me. They have their own workbench, and so it was just one of those perfect storms that everything came together. I loved the idea of it. I got to work with my kids. I got to be a stay-at-home dad, and my background is whenever I pick up a new hobby, I start videoing it just to catalog what I'm doing. And I've got like 8 or 10 YouTube channels of other hobbies that I have and things like that. And I just started making this channel for myself, and people started liking it. And a few years later, here I am today. So that's a little bit of my background. Also, for those of you who aren't watching this live, I am leaving all of the questions down in the comments below and the description below with a timestamp, so you can go and see what the questions are and how I answer them. Hello from Portugal. Good to have you here. Gary Bush. Even the easy ones, I still butcher them. Too far. Yeah, if any of you have questions, go ahead and leave them in the chat, and I will try and get those there. TJ's Woodworking. Oh yeah, you're commenting with Bleak. Brad. Kind of right. Sorry, Marcus. I think I got it. Kind of right. I guess that's better than I anticipated. Most of the time, I'm way off when I try and pronounce people, especially surnames. There, I'm horrible with that. Love the channel. Any advice for choosing a type of wood for making a mallet? This is from Jeffrey Sands. Mallets, well, okay, let me back up. There are people out there who are going to tell you there are right woods for a mallet, and there are people who are going to tell you that there are wrong woods for a mallet. And if you're not using the correct wood, then you are making a mallet badly. And honestly, I really hate it when people say there's a right way and a wrong way to do things. There is no right way to do woodworking, and there is no wrong way to do woodworking as long as you're safe. Stop trying to find the perfect method, because your perfect method will not be the perfect method for someone else. And the same thing goes for what's the best wood for a particular project. Now, there are woods that I would consider to be better for some things. A good heavy joiner's mallet. I love oak. I like maple. I think the best one would be like a European beech, very dense, very percussive. And a lot of people out there really wouldn't like oak because it's an open cell. Cherry tends to be fairly good. A little bit softer, but works great for most things. But then you might want a finishing mallet, and you might want one made out of pine. You might want one that is softer than the wood you're going to be working on, so that the mallet dings rather than the work you're working on. Or you might want a brass mallet. So it really depends on what you're wanting to do with it. And basically it comes down to, is the wood harder than the work you're working on? In other words, if you want something heavy duty that's going to last a long time, then you're going to want a hard, sturdy wood like beech or maple, or maybe some South American or African hardwood. If you want something that is softer than the wood you're working on, it's not going to be quite as heavy, but it won't dent up the work you're working on, and that'll be better for finishing. So I guess you got to ask yourself, what are you going to be doing with the mallet? But for a traditional joiner's mallet, traditionally, if you're in America, maple is where to go. If you're in Europe, beech is the go-to wood. But don't let that hold you back. If you have wood on hand, make a mallet. You're really not going to have that much problem. And if for some reason the mallet breaks, then you can make another one. Hope that answers your question. Ruben Minikveld. Sorry. Just wanted to tell you I really enjoy your vids and think you're really amazing. How to handle woodworking and have kids around. Well, thank you. I thought that was a question there, but thanks. That really means a lot. I love having my kids in the shop. That's one of the reasons I picked up hand tools, but it's a lot of fun. What do you do for a living? Samuel Roberts. I don't. I am a stay-at-home dad. That is my job. But I used to have a full-time job working in the theater world. My master's is in technical theater. And I loved my job and I got my dream job. My wife is a registered nurse, and then we found out that if we're both working, we're paying a babysitter to watch our kids, but the babysitter is making slightly less than what I'm making. So there was no reason for me to have a job. So I became a stay-at-home dad, and we live off my wife's income. And this is a woodworking hobby for me. It's paying for itself. And the last couple months, I have been breaking even or doing a little bit better, but not really enough to say that there's a serious income. So this is not really an income for me. In the future, it may become that. But most all the money that comes in through YouTube or Patreon gets dumped right back into making the videos, putting out everything it needs to be. So I really can't say that this is an income for me. And if people ask me, I'm not a professional woodworker. I am a professional content creator. So I make videos, but the topic tends to be woodworking. So a little bit different from what most people are expecting. But yeah, that's that's where I'm at. Greetings from Yorkshire. Good to have you here. Michigan. Ooh, I grew up, one of the places I lived was Michigan. I lived in 5 different towns in Michigan, all over UP and northern and southern Michigan. So good time being there. Thanks, Chunk. Do you like editing YouTube videos? This is also from Marcus, who asked earlier. Yes and no. The nice thing about creating videos is that it is the work that has to be done for creating content. And so it is, I can still have the enjoyment and the love of the hobby of woodworking, because the actual woodworking itself doesn't bring in any revenue for it. The work is creating and editing, uploading and creating documents. The actual editing is kind of fun, but all of the syndication, writing blog posts, and the uploading and writing the descriptions and things like that, I find those to be painful and slow. But oh well, that's what we got to do. So, do you like editing videos? Yeah, it's all the other things that I really don't. So I hope that answers your question. Does the metal quality determine if you can or easily get burr when sharpening? Getting a noticeable burr on my new luban block plane, but not so much on my old Stanleys. This is from Matthew Mohon. I think I'm saying that, but probably not. Steel is a whole topic that, oh wow. The right steel and the wrong steel is a heated debate and topic, and until you work with it a long time, you're really not going to be noticing that much difference. The harder the harder the metal is, the less chance you're going to be getting a burr. But the harder the metal is, the more it has a chance to chip on you. The softer the metal is, the less chance it's going to chip, the easier it is to sharpen, but the more burr you're going to be getting onto it, and you're not going to be getting as sharp of a point. The point isn't going to last as long with a softer blade. So some people want to have a slightly softer steel. It sharpens easier. You get that burr that you get to know is on there, and you get to wipe it off, and that always feels good. But they dull quicker. So that's kind of the trade-off. Whereas if you get a harder steel, they're harder to sharpen, they last longer, but different steels are going to get you different things. As long as it's a fairly good carbon steel, you're going to be somewhere in that spectrum. And some people like one ways, and some people like the other way. And most people don't know the difference, other than do you get a burr, or does it feel like it's dulling quickly? So no. I like to tell people the ultimate way to test if it's sharp or not. And, there's hundreds of ways to tell, but the best way to tell, through audio or through video, is to take the blade and try and shave the hairs on your arm. If you shave half the hairs that it touches, it's probably not that sharp. You can probably go back and resharpen it. If it hits every single hair on the first pass, and really cleans the hair off your arm in one easy pass, then it's sharp. It's ready to go. Whether or not you get a burr on there may depend on your steel. but you may be able to get it completely sharp if you get a burr or if you don't get a burr. Most of the time, I don't sharpen enough to put a major burr on there, maybe just enough that I can barely feel it with training, but not enough that I can see it or even have a wire edge come off. I try and resharpen them fast enough that there isn't enough material on there to come off. So I don't like testing whether or not a burr tells me if it's sharp or not. Some people do, some people don't. But yeah, the hair method is what I like to use because it's easy to tell people if it's sharp or not. Some people like to use their thumbnail or a piece of paper, and there are other ways to do that, but it's kind of hard to explain the feeling of the thumbnail over a video, or different types of ragged edges you might get with paper to tell whether or not it's sharp or not. So yeah, hope that answers your question, but probably threw a whole new can of worms in there. Sorry. Oh, wow. We're getting a lot of comments here. Let me see if I can march down. How old are your kids? We had 3 kids in 3 years. Right now they are 4, 6, and 7 at the moment. My oldest is 7, and she has her own YouTube channel, Melody's Workbench. And it's kind of fun to play with her. She's actually just going to be uploading another video here soon that she made a sign for her grandmother. And it's kind of fun. I like just letting them have the run of the shop, and they say, you know, I want to hook this piece, I want to put this piece of wood onto this piece of wood. And so I talk them through the joinery and show them the tools and how to use them, and they make things. And so it's kind of fun to teach them in the shop. I love having the kids in the shop. Good morning from down under, Goff George. Good to have you here. Glad you got the sticker. And I'm never quite sure if the stickers are going to make it overseas. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, and I have to send to get them. Getting started with the handworking. Cool. My tools. Sorry, reading down to see if there's any questions here. You got me started in woodworking. Thanks, Marcus. I'm glad I can help you out there. It's a fun hobby, and I really enjoy it. I hope that that love of woodworking shows up in my videos. I never quite know if it does, but that's really what I'm here. And I've had a lot of people ask me, you know, what is the purpose of your videos? I don't try and teach woodworking per se. I don't try and teach craftsmanship. I don't try and teach quality. I try and teach fun. And so I might do things that are a more difficult method or a weird method or a hard way of doing it. But I'm showing things that I find to be enjoyable, things that I find to be fun. I don't want the shop to be about the projects. I don't want the shop to be about the products that are put out. I want the shop to be about the enjoyment, going down to the shop and spending some time and relaxing. And that's really what I want the whole channel to be about, is sharing the joy of woodworking. So I hope that comes across. What would you say is the easiest wood to work with for getting into hand tools? This is from Brad Ward, and that is an interesting question, and one that I get almost arguments played out on my channel regularly. I don't use a lot of the normal hand tool woods. Cherry and black walnut are amazingly easy to use. Poplar, sometimes poplar is a bit too soft. They flow very nicely. They're soft enough that you can still work with them. Walnut particularly is almost like planing butter. It feels fantastic. My main go-to wood that I use on most projects is white oak, and that is a pain to work with hand tools. It is a very difficult wood, and that's what I love about it. There's a challenge to it. There's the excitement of something new. The grain is wild. It goes all over the place. And so I find the reward of working with white oak to be far greater than the effort put into it. But that's me. Some people want the easy way to do it, and in that case, cherry and walnut are fantastic woods to start working with hand tool woodworking. If you're just wanting to learn the techniques, poplar is a great wood, yeah, they're the type of thing you really can't go wrong with. But I find them to be a little bit dull. I mean, black walnut has its characteristics that are very enjoyable, and for a lot of things, I really like how that comes out. But I don't know why white oak just keeps drawing me back. I really love it. That and hickory. Hickory is absolutely gorgeous when it really gets wild and the grain goes everywhere. An absolute pain to work with, far harder than white oak even, but a lot of fun. Marcus, you're from Denmark. Good to know. One of these days I want to get over to Europe and see a few things over there. I'd love to do a tour and do some historical woodworking in different sites with different things going on. I thought that would be a fun trip someday, but yeah, need to find a way to pay for that first. Need to find a video on how to sharpen the old sharpened chisels. How to sharpen the old sharpened chisels. You sharpen old chisels just like new chisels. I guess I don't know what you're asking for in there. I like to do them freehand, but putting them in a jig is a great way to do it. So yeah, if you want to clarify that, I might get down to that a little bit earlier. Old steel, you're never quite sure what you're going to be getting, especially if it was hand wrought. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not. A lot of people really like the old steel because it tends to be a little bit softer. Unless you are getting one that's laminated, you might have a very, very hard edge and then a softer back. Yeah, different things. You never quite know what you're going to get because so many different people made it and it wasn't quite like nowadays you have your A2 and your O1 and your PMV11, and they're very specific amalgamations of steel that you know what you're getting, and you play with one and it feels the same on all your tools. Whereas with older steel, you never quite know, and it's always kind of fun to play with. What are some projects you think someone would create and sell with a minimal set of tools or nice gift ideas? This is from Joe Garcia. For selling woodworking, hand tools are really not the way to go. There are very few things you can do with handmade things that are viable for selling, especially when you run up against anyone who has a power tool. Gift-wise, I like, simple things like the cutting board and wooden spoons, things that were hand carved. Those you put time into them, but they're worth a lot in that the gift way. If you do want to get into making, I think the only way you can really do it is like a foot-powered lathe. Turned products are very, very easy to do, very, very quick, and excuse me. Once you put a little bit of time into them, they go really well. And so, yeah, turned items. Your handles for different things, or vases and cups and bowls. Those, they don't take that much time to create, and you can turn a profit on selling those. But they also make great gifts. Paul Sellers has a series on Christmas gifts, and he has a few little toys and things that he makes that are pretty easy, like the helicopters that you can spin in your hands. Those are fairly easy. He has some great videos on that, so definitely take a look at those. Hope that answers your question. London from Chris Lowe's. Good to have you here. That's one of the things I love about the hand tool woodworking world, is I tend to have a little bit larger international audience. So it's kind of cool to hear from people outside of just the U.S., which I love that. So thanks. Going down further. Question from Cody Bryant. Could you give me some advice on edge joining, as in how do you know when the edge is true? Well, edge joining, usually the only reason you're going to edge joint is if you're putting together a panel and you want the two panels to match up. And the way you can do that is put the two panels together and see if you see light coming through it. And then that way you know that the two are put together. So even if they have a slight curve in them, oh well, as long as they join up together. If you want to know if the edge is straight, then you get down and you eyeball along it, and your eyeball will tell you fairly closely if it's straight. A jointer plane is great in that it tells you when it's straight. So if the the long bed of your jointer plane, it will tell you if it's straight. So the long bed will basically flatten. So if you imagine you have two hills, oops, sorry. If you have two hills, the jointer plane is going to span those two hills, and the blade in the middle is not going to cut out the valley. But then when it comes to the hill, that blade will then cut out that hill. And so the jointer plane is always taking down the high spots and leaving the low spots alone. And so when you use a jointer plane and you go completely from one end to the other end and you get a curl going all the way along it, you know that it is straight or the whole thing is one big hill. And eyeballing down it will tell you if it's one big hill. What a lot of people will do is they'll actually start in the middle of the board and they will hog out the middle until it's running well, or until the point where the blade is no longer cutting. So you basically have a hill on either end, and then you start going from one end to the other. And that way you're starting with a concave area because you hogged out the middle area, and then you start going from end to end until you start bringing in those hills on either end until it's flat and you get a shaving all the way from one end to the other. So I hope that answers your question. If not, let me know. Whoop, I gotta copy that so I can put it into the description below. I'm trying to make sure as I go, I copy all of these questions over so that I can add them into the descriptions here in a bit. Crazy Timber in the house. Good to have you, man. How you got people wanting from all around the world? You got people waiting from all around the world. Yeah. There are people all over the world that like hand tool woodworking, and it's kind of a cool thing because it's not something that is area driven. What is your past job? I used to, well, my undergrad was in biblical studies, which is kind of an odd way, and then my master's was in technical theater. Basically, I was the engineer for theaters, or for stages. So whenever they would want a set built, it would be my job to design the actual mechanicals of how it was done, special effects, automation, things like that, and then oversee the crew doing it. And so there was a lot of administration things that went into that. My last job, I was I was the supervisor of a metalworking shop in a theater. And so the theater was large enough that we had a metalworking shop and a woodworking shop and a finishing shop. And I oversaw the welding and the detail work, the foam that went onto it, and the carving and the sculpting of these set pieces. And so that was kind of fun because we got to work on multi-million-dollar sets that were impressive and enjoyable to work on. So, and now I do hand tool woodworking. So stay-at-home dad. It's kind of fun how life changes. Reading down through, seeing if there's any comments. How do you learn so quick? Again, from Marcus. Anything with my hands, I pick it up very, very quickly. If I can see it, I can envision how it feels, and I can pick it up. And so that is a skill that I have. And so things like that, once I can try them a few times, I can generally get close to mastering it with a few practices. And one of the things I like about this, I'm not teaching people how to be perfect. I'm not teaching people how to perfect what they are doing. I want to teach people how to have fun with it. And so, if dovetails have gaps, oh well. If a board isn't perfectly flat, oh well. If I'm not measuring to exact tolerances, I don't care. I'm not in it for the craftsmanship. I'm in it for the fun, the enjoyment, the building things in the shop, and the fun that comes with taking rough lumber and turning it into something. And I love that. Man, we're working, brother. James, where do you get your project ideas from? Chuck Steak. I'm gonna go with Steak. Probably saying it wrong. Sorry, Chuck. Woodworking ideas, as in like my projects. I have a long list of projects that I want to get into, videos I want to create in the future, and so I'm always working off that list. I watch a lot of YouTube videos. I try and watch like 20 to 30 videos a day. And in doing so, I get a lot of ideas, and my list grows far faster than I can build it. I like learning from other people and seeing what they do, and I'll draw a little idea from here and a little idea from there. Kind of like my current bench. You know, I like the big beefy top and legs of a Roubo, but with a smaller bench like this, I want the legs to be a little smaller. So I decided to pull a skirt off of a Nicholson bench and put it on one side of the bench. I like to compile different ideas that I get from here and there and see where they all come together. So my ideas come from all over the place. If you want to see some of the inspiration I find things, I put out an email every 2 weeks from videos I find from the last 2 weeks that I found inspirational, and some of the ideas of what I found about them to be inspirational. So if you want to see that, you can subscribe to my email list and get that every 2 weeks. How do you sell your work? I do not sell my work. I am not a professional woodworker. I have sold my woodworking in the past when I was power tools, and that it was actually financially viable, but now I do not sell my work. Occasionally I'll have someone ask me, you know, can you make that dresser for me? I'll pay for it, and then I throw the number at them with the calculation. You know, my calculation for my time and materials spent in making the dresser for my wife was $40,000. And no one out there is going to pay $40,000 for my dresser. And even if they did, I don't know if I want to sell things. Because if I sell things, then the work becomes the woodworking. And I'd rather make things that are fun, things that I want to make, rather than making something that someone else wants me to make. So that's why I don't sell anything. Hello from Pittsburgh. Good to have you here. Any tips on what steel to use for making wooden planes? I actually go to Amazon and I buy O1 tool steel. I like O1. It is oil hardened, so you can. I just find it to be a little bit more reliable for making it, and so I buy most of my stock from Amazon. There is a local steel seller who sells O1, but he needs it in larger pieces. Whereas in Amazon, I can buy, you know, like 1 foot sticks that are, you know, 1/8 inch thick by 1.5 inch wide, and I can get it fairly cheaply. So O1 is my normal go-to when I buy steel. Hope that answers your question. If not, let me know. Whoops. Trying to copy this over so that people can see it in the future. Okay, next question. Too far. Wow, lots of comments down below. Can you buy plane blades separately? Yes. Depends on what you are asking for. If you're talking about like the Stanley traditional the metal body Stanley hand planes, you can buy them by bulk on Amazon, on eBay. I'll occasionally find them at Midwest Tool Collectors Association meets. Some of the old wooden hand planes blades, I can occasionally find those there. Sometimes I'll find the junk hand planes. The blade in it is still good, but the rest of the plane is parts, and so I'll pull the iron out of that. But you can find them all over the place. eBay, you can find older ones, and then you can buy replacements you can get from new places like Hawk. Lee Valley sells replacement blades that you can buy, new ones that have recently been made. So yes, you can buy them separately. That question was from Gary Bush, which was at 34. Copying all of these over is always fun. Try to do it while talking, but that's not always working. I'm 14. How do you get cheap hand tools of good quality? Again, from Marcus. Good question. I put out a video a while ago on where I find some of my basic hand tools. And so that might have some ideas for you, but different things in different places. My favorite place to go to is Midwest Tool Collectors. And it's mostly in the Midwest of the United States, but they're trying to get events all over the United States, and you go there and you're going to find everything you've ever wanted, and great prices, great quantities. And imagine a gymnasium full of tables, and every table is covered with hand tools, and people standing behind every table know exactly what they have and know the information about them. That's my favorite place to go. But if you're not, if you're on the West Coast, there aren't any out there. We're trying to find some people who will host them out there, but none yet. I occasionally can find them at antique stores. I have 3 or 4 antique stores that I go to around here that I might find something. The cheapest place where I normally get them is estate sales. So when my son is walking around upstairs, you might hear that. When an older woodworker passes away or he's getting rid of all of his tools, I often get good deals on that. Like I had a place a while ago that I bought 20 hand planes for a total of $100. Occasionally find that. Every now and then, like once or twice a year, I might get a Craigslist ad that has them. Rarely do I buy on eBay. It's just so expensive on there. And I've not had a really good experience. Occasionally I do, but nothing really. It's just a matter of keeping your eyes open, and different places have different things. Saws I can find everywhere I look. Every garage sale, estate sale, antique store. When I say every garage sale, I might go to like 40 garage sales before I find one with saws, but that's pretty common. Most antique stores, I'm going to find 2 or 3 saws there. Hand planes, a little bit less than that. Then you start getting into specific tools. And once you start getting into specific tools like routers or compass plane, or you're wanting that specific, rabbiting plane, those you have a little bit harder time. That's why I love Midwest Tool Collectors Association. You find them there. In that case, you may end up having to go to eBay to find exactly what you're looking for. There are a few tool sellers who are starting to sell things online, and I listed them in the video where I was talking about where I find tools. So you might get lucky there. Hyper Kitten, online website, they sell a lot of things on there, but you never quite know what you're going to get. Not a huge selection, but what you get over there, he's going to tell you exactly what you're getting and what's in that, so you know the quality of what you're going to be getting. But you just got to know it. You got to hunt and peck. It takes a lot of legwork. I'll go to a dozen estate sales before I find one with a good deal. So it's a lot of work, but you'll find them out there. Do you work with cherry? It can be tough to work with power tools, planer joiner, chip out and sand easily, but I was wondering how it does with hand tools. Cherry is a great tool for hand tools. I don't know why you'd be getting a lot of chip out and tear out with power tools. It's a really smooth, buttery wood that doesn't like, it's relatively soft in comparison to a lot of hardwoods. Yes, I've done carving in cherry. My leg vise is in cherry. Both of the 2 new leg vices I'm going to be putting on my bench are large, thick cherry chops. Yes, cherry is a very good hand tool wood, and some people would consider it to be easy for hand tools, at least in comparison to like oak and other things like that are not easy. I didn't copy. Up here, 1, 2, 3, click, paste. There we go. Do you like sharpening? Sometimes, sometimes not. I often run things too long and let them go, and then I need to spend more time sharpening them. There are tools that are fun to sharpen, and there are times when sharpening is boring, but it's something you got to do. So, oh well. I've seen where some hold the blade in their fingernail. Blade doesn't slip down. Should be good. Don't see the. Sorry, I'm reading down to see if I have any questions. Do you use Maker Mark of some kind? So where do you get it? I do have a branding iron that I made a while ago. I actually found a place online that will 3D print out of stainless steel, and so I got into AutoCAD and designed what I wanted it to look like in 3D, and then shipped it off to them, and they sent me the branding iron head that I then threaded on a bolt and put a wooden handle on it. I have a video on it a long time ago, but that was back when I was first starting to make videos, so it's not all that good of a quality video, but it does show it. So if you search for Wood by Wright branding iron, you'll probably come across it. I do like the branding iron. I use it on a few things. I don't use it as much as I used to. I used to put it on everything, whereas now I tend to carve my logo into things, but a little bit different. Where do you get your woodcraft, your wood? Where do I get my wood? Mostly on Craigslist. This is a question from Samuel Roberts. I look for crazy good deals, like once a year. Well, okay, like 2 years ago, my favorite deal, a guy on Craigslist inherited his father's barn. He had, I think, 20,000 board feet of white oak, and he was selling it for 50 cents a board foot. And I got as much as I could possibly fit in my van, and I've been slowly working through that, and I'm most of the way through it. And then I found a camp north of me that had a bunch in stock. They milled their own lumber, and so I did some work for them and traded for their lumber. And knowing good friends with a chainsaw mill, and I have several pieces drying that were milled up by a good friend of mine, Miller from Miller's Woods. He has another YouTube channel. And I like to buy in bulk rather than buying for a project. Buying for a project tends to be very expensive. I've never actually purchased lumber from a lumber yard. I know several of the local lumber mills, the guys who have a wood miser in their backyard, and they'll mill up a log every now and then. So anytime I'm looking for something specific, I go to them. I have purchased a few small pieces from Woodcraft, but they were, I needed a piece of Purple Heart that was, 1 inch by 3 inch by 2 foot long, and small scraps like that, or beechwood, not beechwood, yeah, beechwood for carving. No, not beechwood, basswood for carving. Carving and beech, that's got to be fun. But yeah, I generally buy in bulk as opposed to buying for a project. I like to meet the local guys. Most all of my wood is locally harvested. I don't like getting stuff from all over the place, but when I have to, I do. So hope that answers your question. Lee Nielson, Veritas, or Old Stanley? This is from Barry Baxter. That really depends. What are you wanting to do? An old vintage plane is great to work with, but you're going to have to put some work into it. Veritas, I love their new customizable hand planes. Holy cow, they are my all-time favorite hand plane, but they cost a lot. Veritas, Lee Nielson, really, really good quality stuff. But you're going to pay through the nose for it. So if you have the money and you don't mind spending the money on tools, then my preferred plane of all time is the Veritas custom hand plane. I like the classical feel of the Lee Nielson. They feel beautiful, and they're a joy to work with. So I guess it's, if you want to go more classical traditional, the Lee Nielson. If you want to buy something new and fangled and with all the bells and whistles, and the plane that I really love is the Veritas Custom. But honestly, I don't have that much money for tools, and that's why most all of mine are restored antiques that I've bought then out of a quagmire of rust and cleaned them up. I really only have 2 planes that were ever new. And both of them were given to me, so I don't have the money to go out and buy them to play with them. But I have spent time playing with both Veritas and Lee Nielson at their events and other places, and they are great to work with. So I guess it depends on your personality. Do you want to buy new, or do you want to restore? Different people like different things. Do Cherry and walnut are very well behaved. Yes, they're a lot of fun. And again, some people like to have the easy woods, cherry and walnut to begin with. And if you are the type of person where you get easily frustrated, then definitely go with cherry and walnut. They'll treat you very well. If you want to have, a challenge and you want to do things that are harder, your maple and your oak, they will. I like the way oak looks far better than cherry or walnut, but there really isn't a better one than another. I guess I'm on my soapbox again. Sorry about that. What was your first project? My first woodworking project I ever made was a what do you call those? Pinewood derby car for the Boy Scouts. And I actually made it out of red oak. I shaped it on the bandsaw and used I think I stained it and lacquered it. And that was my first ever woodworking project. My first hand tool project was probably building the clamps to build my bench, because I ended up building several tools in order to build my bench. I think it was the clamps were the first thing that I made, unless you call like the poor man's router, like Paul Sellers shows. I built one of those. My first big project was my first bench for hand tools. So yeah, and if you want to see any of that, all of my hand tool journey has been cataloged in videos. So if you want to go back and watch my first few videos, actually my first video is buying my first ever hand plane, and that was a lot of fun. But be warned, the first several months of my videos were for my sake, and I didn't think anyone would ever want to watch them, but they're up there if you want to see them. So are you self-taught, or did you go to a woodworking school? Well, my father taught me most everything I know. And so I don't know if I can call that self-taught for the power tool world. For hand tools, YouTube has taught me. I learned everything I know from YouTube and articles and going and talking with people and events and things like that. I have a lot of friends who are hand tool people as well. So I guess you would say I'm self-taught, but yeah. How old woodworking with wood? Sorry, I don't know what you're meaning there. I'm guessing it's a Russian characters. Sorry. One of these days I need to learn another language, but I can't learn them all. Did you just call walnut dull? Yes. Well, it depends on your walnut. If you go to the lumber yard and you buy steamed walnut, it is very dull. Yes, it's dark and it's kind of interesting, but it's too homogeneous for me. It doesn't have a lot of character. If you get, air dried walnut, then you get a lot of character, especially if you get some sapwood in there and you get the degradation from one side to the other. I really enjoy that. But in comparison to oak, white oak, for me, walnut is very dull. But each their own. Too far. Jumped again. Have you read the Anarchist design book? Any thoughts? No, I have not. It is on my list, but reading books is a very, very slow way of getting new information, and so I don't read as many books as I probably should. But yeah, I have not read that one yet. It is on my list though, and I will eventually get to it. So, the Anarchist design book. I've been told it is very good. Where is the best place to sell a lathe? I don't know. I would go to a Midwest Tool Collectors Association meeting. You would probably sell it that very day. Craigslist, you may or may not do any good. I guess you would I don't sell very many tools. Most everything I do, I give away. I restore tools and then give them to people who are getting started into woodworking. So I don't end up selling very many. So I guess I'm not a great resource on that one. Love your bench. Nice to. Would you recommend a number 7 Stanley joiner or make my own wooden joining plane? This is from Bronson Stein. You know, if you want to go and make your own, I love making my own tools because I get to make them the way I want to make them. I get to make them feel the way I enjoy them. And that I love that. That being said, buying a traditional or an older metal Stanley, it's done and you get to use it. I mean, you may have to flatten it and work on it a bit, but it's not going to be as much as making one. So I guess it depends on what you want to do. I had the good fortune of trading for my first jointer hand plane. And now I occasionally find them here and there for like 30 or 40 bucks. And so for me, buying it is more efficient and useful, but I am going to be making one here soon. So I don't know. I guess it depends on what you feel comfortable with. I always advocate making your own tools because you can make them the way you want them. And if you don't like it, then you can change it or you can remake it. And that's just always fun. Your bench does not use a center well for tool storage. Have you used one with a well before? Yes, I have. I've used one with a center well as well as on the back, and I hate them. I really cannot stand tool wells. They load up with wood chips. They're a great place to lose pins and pencils and knives. They're always getting in the way because the hand plane still sticks up above the top. I have never liked a tool well. But again, that is completely a personal preference. You may or may not like a tool well. You won't know until you try. And the same thing with the split top. I think the split top design is kind of something that people love because they can then run the 2 halves of the top through a surface planer. I don't like it. If I want a planing stop right across the middle, I'm going to put a planing stop in. I don't know. I just never found that useful. I don't like tools sticking out of my bench right in the middle of my bench. So yeah, I think that's why I like having the tool wall right behind me so I can turn around. All my tools are in access there. And if my bench starts to get cluttered with tools, then I stop. I take a minute and a half and I put them away and I keep going. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of tool wells, but everyone's different, so you never know. Any trips up to Minnesota, Twin Cities, from Chris Albee. Yeah, I was just up there. Oh man, it was almost a year ago. I was up there with Matt Cremona. I would like to get back up there again. I'm actually intending to talk to him soon and see if I can buy a slab from him. I don't have anything on the books, but I'm hoping to get up there, and maybe I'll do a meetup when we get up there. We'll see. If you would be publishing plans. Am I going to be publishing plans for the bench? I really, really want to, but that is going to take a lot of work, and I have not had the time recently to do that. I'm hoping to, though. I've had a lot of people plans to the bench, and yeah, I should be able to get it. I'm hoping to have those ready for when I put up the last video for the leg vices, so I can put those out with that. But we'll see. Yeah, keep pushing me. I might get them out here soon. What would you suggest? What would you suggest cypress be used for? Anything you want. I've never actually worked with cypress, so I'm not as familiar with it. But I've been told it's good for outdoor things. I don't know. It also tends to be a fairly plain wood. But I've been told it's good for hand tool woodworking. So yeah, I don't know. I've never played with cypress that much, so I'm not familiar. It doesn't grow around me. I'm very well acquainted with the woods that grow around me, but I don't get into much that I have to import. What is your favorite hand plane? Oh, that's a good question. My favorite hand plane is the one that is in my hand at the moment. Kind of a cop-out answer, sorry. I like the 4.5. I like the feel of the 4.5. I can still do smoothing with it. You know, I can joint with it as long as I use other things to tell me if the wood is flat. I think that's one that I probably use more than any other. I think second would have to be the number 7. It just feels good. Big heavy duty plane. I think those are my favorite of the Stanleys. My favorite all-time plane is the number 4 Veritas custom plane. Every chance I get to use that thing, oh, I love it. It just feels so good. And you can very easily adjust it to be precisely what you want it to be. So yes, I love my Veritas custom plane. So hope that answers your question. Probably not, but oh well. What handsaws would you purchase first? That depends. I end up saying that quite a bit. But it depends on you. I advocate buying an old panel saw with, you know, like a 9 or an 8-point crosscut and learning to restore it and sharpen it. A lot of people are afraid of sharpening saws, but I can tell you, you're not going to mess the saw up. And even if you go hog wild on the thing and mess it up, well, you can joint it and put new teeth in it. It's really not that big of a deal. And you're usually going to end up making the saw sharper than it was before. So don't worry about sharpening it. It's something the only way to learn is to jump in and do it. And you can usually pick them up at antique stores and garage sales and things like that for, you know, $3 to $5 a saw or less. I picked up a bunch of them. I think it was like 10 saws for $5 the other day. Most of them were junk, but some of them were good. And so for that price, you know, that price range, even if you do mess up the saw, oh well, there's others out there. You can go get another one. That's just the way to go. For back saws, Western back saws, I really like the Veritas, their composite backs. For the price, you really can't beat them. They're good quality saws, and they'll work you very well. Japanese saws, I've recently found some made by, oh, it's a Japanese name starting with an S. I just put them in my most recent video if you want to see a link to them. I like them. They work great, and I'm starting to use Japanese saws more, forcing myself to learn how to use them and how they feel. So you'll be seeing more of that. So I hope that answers your question. Have you started doing that? Have you started including power tools in your shop yet? I put out a video 3-4 months ago introducing a power planer, a handheld power planer. It is really, as of right now, I think the only power tool I'm going to be introducing, and the only reason I do use it occasionally is for I want to be able to put out more furniture builds. I'm not using it right now on my bench build because I want the bench to be all hand tool made. But yes, a big beefy power planer is a nice thing. If I wasn't making videos, I probably wouldn't because I like the slow-paced hand tool woodworking. So in order to get enough videos out, I have to speed up certain things. So hope that answers your question. My spokeshave clogs up terribly after approximately 10 strokes. Get chips stuck between the cap and the mouth. I can't seem to figure it out. It might be that it is slowly getting a deeper and deeper cut. And in other words, if you're taking too deep of a cut, then it is filling up that mouth. Try taking a thinner cut. It could be that the blade is skewed and you're taking a thick cut on one side and a thin cut on the other. And if you slide from one side to the other, then it gets jammed in there. It's usually due to having too thick of a chip coming through too small of a mouth. I would have to see particularly to answer the question any further. But yeah, I think a lot of people, especially with the spoke shave, try to take off much bigger cuts than they need to. And learning to take smaller and thinner cuts is kind of a challenge, but sometimes worth it, and a lot of fun. Wispy shavings are always enjoyable. It would be 1. I think I'm coming close to. Oh no, I'm nowhere near the clan. But I think I'm maybe wrapping this up. I'm gonna answer a few more questions and see what we got. Thoughts on Sargent planes? I love Sargent, especially the older ones. I have several Sargent planes in my normal rotation. They are great. The newer ones, in other words, post-war, they started getting junkier and junkier, but so do all brands, Stanley included. But yes, Sargent is a great plane name. Do you restore planes to sell? No, I don't. I restore them and I give them away to people who are wanting to learn the art. I find people who are interested in it and give them away. Most everything I restore, I give away. I don't sell things. Yes, I know I could make money on it, but I don't want to. I really want to improve the sport and the community, so that's why I give things away. Brad from Bearcat. Good to have you here. Sorry, reading down to see if there's any more questions before I go. A lot of good discussion, though. I'll have to come back and read a lot of it later. That's one of the problems about talking at the same time. It's hard to actually read them. It's easier on the podcast because I can read the comments while someone else is talking. But while I'm talking, it's hard. Thomas asked what I do for a living. I'd actually ask you to go back and watch this earlier. I answered that question near the beginning of this video. So I know if you jumped on a little later, you didn't get to see it, but it'll come back up as soon as I hop off here. Wow, I think I actually got to the end. So I think that's about it for today. If you guys have any questions or thoughts, feel free to email me. I have a contact on my website, and I love to answer those questions. I'm usually getting, a couple emails a day, and I like to answer them and help out the community any way I can. So that's about it for today. I hope you like this, and I'm going to try and do one of these once a month. These are brought to you by the patrons on Patreon. They are the achievement that reached, so that I can put these out once a month. And I really like doing it. I might try and do more of them, but that's about it. So hope you like this. Until next time, have a wonderful day. Stopping.